everyone. I'm Mackenzie Nelson, artist, pattern designer, creative entrepreneur, and stay-at-home mom. Today in this video, I hope to portray to you the essence of my painting process. So sit back, pull out a sketchbook, or prepare a cozy drink. I'm so glad you're here. Creating a work of art is making something that didn't exist before. There's something so exhilarating about it. When I look at a prepped panel that is just waiting to be painted on, I think of the world of possibilities it brings. Will there be challenges throughout the process? Most definitely. But the process is beautiful. And in the end, after you've worked through the issues and you've come to a place of contentment, you're left with knowledge and experience and beauty. The painting taught you things, and because of that, you're no longer the same person you were before you began. There are subtle changes, but you take those changes with you. That is the process of evolving as an artist and a person, learning from our experiences and becoming something new, something that didn't exist before. I've been an artist my whole life, taking commissions and painting portraits, landscapes, and florals through my years of having babies and raising our kids at home. But last year, which was early in 2023, I felt like I should take my art seriously. I had completed my online degree the year before, we had just moved, and our youngest was almost 2. I was apprehensive though because we were homeschooling with a toddler in tow, and life already felt so busy. As much as I wanted to, I didn't think it was possible at the time. Then, one day, while changing my baby's diaper, the reality set in that life was probably not going to get any simpler, and that's when I realized it was time to begin. The big question in the beginning for every creative entrepreneur is, how do you start? How do you build an art business? Where do you begin to create something out of nothing? For me, that question was the start of a journey I had not anticipated. I did what I could and I continued to paint. I created a new Instagram account and I started reading books recommended by entrepreneurs. I began to talk and work closely with others around me who could guide me in the process. I made plans to start a website, open an online store, and even created an ebook to help beginners learn to draw, which is now a free download on my website. My process was slow, but I believed I would get more direction as I kept working. Summer came and I decided to try my hand at some local markets. I painted new artwork and had prints made. It was a fun experience, but certainly not my end goal. The thought kept swirling around in my head, how do I grow? Where do I go from here? There was so much unknown ahead of me. Sometimes it felt overwhelming and discouraging, especially when I watched other artists closely who were actually doing it. I tried to learn from them, but comparison would sneak into my subconscious. I recognized that comparison was stealing my joy, and so I'd work to displace the negative thoughts and remember that everyone starts at zero. I kept learning and I kept digging, and it was at that point that everything started to change. One day, I saw an ad on my Instagram feed for a free course on the different revenue streams for artists. Something was different about this ad, and so I signed up. It was a week-long course with recorded lessons and live calls, and it blew my mind. I learned about art business revenue streams I had never heard of before. I learned that there were so many possibilities for artists. That free course set me on a path, and suddenly I had an insatiable hunger to learn more. I was introduced to a whole world of creative entrepreneurship that I didn't know existed. This started a deep dive into clarity that was slowly being unveiled to me. I began to get glimpses of how I could create an art business out of nothing. That's when I really got to work, and to be honest, I was sort of obsessed. but let's just call it passionate. From that moment on, every spare moment I could find was spent learning and creating. It was like drinking from a fire hose, and I was so thirsty. During nap times and late into the nights, I spent my time creating art, making business plans, building my website, creating online portfolios, reading books, listening to podcasts, taking courses, watching Skillshare classes, and learning new programs like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and Procreate. I dreamt of seeing my artwork on products and in stores throughout the country, so I learned how to make repeat patterns for things like fabric and wallpaper and began pitching my artwork to companies for art licensing. The more I learned, the more I realized I had so much more to learn. But my mind was expanding, and through this process, a transformation was taking place within myself. I was developing a very clear picture of who I wanted to be in the future and what I wanted to do with my art. The funny thing about envisioning yourself in the future, though, is that you can start to feel impatient about not being that person now. At least that's how it felt for me. But I also understood that I had not yet done the countless things required to become the person I envisioned. So I was to be content in the present. At this point, the biggest obstacle was no longer where do I go from here, but how do I find the time? I had so much I wanted to do and become that I felt like I would explode. As I said before, I had set out to build a creative business on the margins of motherhood, and sometimes I felt frustrated that I couldn't make faster progress. I also discovered that with all of that passion I was experiencing for art and entrepreneurship, balance was difficult to maintain. I was losing a lot of sleep. The house was messier than normal, and I couldn't seem to find a groove with this dedication to my newfound passion. I soon realized I needed to be more mindful of how I spent my time and mental energy. I started to feel like something was off and my usual high amounts of energy and passion were draining. That's when I recognized early signs of burnout. I needed to allow my mind to rest more, and not just when I was sleeping. It was so fun to create something out of nothing, especially when my dreams were becoming so big and so clear, but doing the mental work every waking moment of the day was not sustainable, even though I loved it. Just as the seasons change, seasons of our life continued to change, and the amount of time I had available to spend on my business changed with it. Our toddler stopped napping, homeschool schedules evolved, and extracurricular activities for our older kids rotated. One thing remained constant, however. I was dedicated to building my art business. By this time, I was feeling a groove. We set up a dedicated space behind closed doors to call my studio, and that was a game changer. I had a beautiful website up and running, and I had begun to land art licensing deals for wallpaper and fabric companies. We started filming for my YouTube channel, and we opened an online store to sell framed and unframed canvas art prints. That brings us to where we are today. Although progress felt so slow this past year, when I look back, I realize we've come a long way. I've learned an incredible amount this year, but the crazy thing is, this is just the beginning. My budding art business is barely coming out of the conception phase. I had high highs like landing exciting art licensing deals and making sales, to low lows like hearing crushing no's from galleries and art directors. One of my biggest takeaways from this past year is learning that one of the biggest obstacles, if not the biggest obstacle for creative entrepreneurs, is mindset. If you don't have a healthy mindset, then you won't get anywhere. Creating something out of nothing can feel so daunting at the beginning, but I like to remember something one of my favorite creative entrepreneurs says: clarity comes in the doing. I certainly experienced that this past year. I mentioned earlier that I have a free ebook that teaches beginner drawing. You can find a link to that download below. If you're interested in buying my art prints, you can also find the link to my store in the description. If you enjoyed this time together, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.